I mean, especially if you just look at technology, like computer language is binary, and I've definitely observed that the more access to information we have, the more as a species, the more binary our thinking has become.
You're listening to
Path of the Jedi.
with your host, Ronnie Cruz.
All right, welcome to Path of the Jedi, the podcast where Star Wars meets personal development. My name is Ronnie Cruz, your host for this rejuvenating adventure. Rejuvenating, number one, because I am currently traveling. And for those of you guys who are regular listeners, you guys know how much I love to travel, especially if it means traveling with a camper and being out in nature and underneath the stars. Currently, as of this recording, we're on the outskirts of Charlottesville, Virginia, at a very nice RV park out here. Over the weekend, we were actually up at Hershey, at the Hershey Park campgrounds, where we hung out with some friends up there. So it's been a nice handful of days. We're going to be on the road for another handful more. And I always find these trips very rejuvenating. I tend to be the kind of person that likes and enjoys a lot of variety. Especially when that variety includes seeing someplace new or being out in nature, right? Doing the things that I love to do, sitting in front of a campfire at night, right? And it's the perfect weather for it right now. The September chill has definitely, it's definitely here. And it makes for perfect camping weather. So it's very, very rejuvenating for me, especially as busy as things have been for me lately. And then on top of that, rejuvenating also because we're starting a new show. It's always, I don't know, it's always a breath of fresh air. Not that Star Wars for me ever gets old, but with all these new assets and these new properties being released on Star Wars, it's just always so invigorating when there's a new one that is just releasing. So Andor is what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm so excited to be diving into this new show because it gives us again another whole world or part of the Star Wars universe, world to peek into and to examine and see how it reflects on our own world and experience. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, just a couple of other things. Really, it's more of an update of what's to come, a sneak peek into some new things that I'm kind of developing and working on for you guys on the show, right? So more Path of the Jedi is always good. On the drive up to Hershey, I was listening to some podcasts and I started thinking what more could I do for the show, right? Obviously, I love the show. I love having conversations around Star Wars and seeing how it reflects on the human condition and what we can glean and potentially learn from the different themes and the story arcs and the character arcs from the Star Wars movies and TV shows. I also think, however, that we could definitely have more conversations, right? I started thinking that there's so much more conversations around personal development from a principle standpoint, from just even my perspective, that I feel could definitely help you guys out on your growth journeys, that I don't necessarily get to have because I'm always I'm always bringing these episodes in the context within the framework of concrete and very specific existing Star Wars properties, right? Again, whether it's a character arc, story arc, or thematically, it always revolves around a very specific angle of Star Wars. So I wanted to bring more personal development that's not necessarily tied to a specific thing in Star Wars. Obviously, it'll still touch on Star Wars, but it won't necessarily be tied to, like, let's say Obi-Wan's story arc or Anakin's fall or any very, very specific thing like that. And I wanted to call this particular segment the Jedi Academy, right? Again, it's more of an educational tool for all of you to help you on your growth journey as you go on this path to becoming Jedis, right? That's what this whole thing is for. Now, as far as like when this will come out, how often it'll come out, it'll definitely be separate episodes from the existing structure. The once a week Path of the Jedi structure is working out great. So I wanted to do it on top of that, again, to give you guys more Path of the Jedi. So Jedi Academy, I think, will be once every 2 weeks or twice a month. I don't know if I have it in me to do another full episode every week. So, making Path of the Jedi twice a week. I mean, I would love to, but I have a lot on my plate. My workload is pretty significant right now. And to do another full episode on top of the existing Path of the Jedi every week would be a lot to juggle. So right now I'm aiming for an episode every 2 weeks. And if I find that I can do more than that, then I will definitely add it to the roster. But as of right now, the goal is, again, every 2 weeks or twice a month for the up and coming new segment, the Jedi Academy. And of course, if it flops, it flops. If you guys don't like it, if you guys don't like listening to it, then I'll cut the show. If it doesn't serve you, then it defeats its purpose. But I'm gonna give that a try. I don't have a set date as far as when that will happen, but be expecting it within the next 2 months, maybe 3 months. But I'm expecting within the next month to 2 months is my projected time to launch that. So yeah, I mean, that's exciting. I love, again, I mean, I think I mentioned this earlier as far as variety. I love refreshing things every once in a while. I mean, if you guys have been following the show, I had to update the cover photo and the art just to give it a little bit of freshness. And so I think this new segment will not only do that, but it'll, again, give you guys even more personal development to chew on. And again, the primary aim is to continue to serve you on your growth journeys as you guys walk this path to becoming Jedi. One last thing before we get into the meat and potatoes of today. A reminder, I am at an RV park. I am camping right now, so I don't have necessarily the controlled environment of for this recording. So you may hear some background noises. I'm actually currently in my truck. I'm sitting in the passenger seat of my truck because it's relatively breezy outside. So I know I would make way too much background noise and interference, as well as vehicles driving by and potentially my dogs losing their mind and barking and stuff. So I'm sitting in my truck, but you will occasionally, if you do, hear the occasional car or vehicle or dog. Understand that it is, again, because we are traveling and we're at an RV park, we're at a campgrounds. Okay, so now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's just really dive into it because we do have a lot to chew on. Even though this is just the first episode of Andor, I already have, for me, it gave me so many immediate kind of reactions and thoughts and reflections based on, reflections on especially how we could potentially look at the world right now today, the world that we live in. It's very apropos. I mean, I guess Star Wars is always kind of relevant to the conversation at hand. And that's what makes a lot of, so many of these writers so good, is that, again, art reflects life and vice versa. They do such a good job with sharing a perspective and a reflection of what's going on in the world through this amazing lens of Star Wars. I first want to start the conversation talking about binary thinking, right? Binary thinking. I think on the surface, Star Wars automatically lends itself to that, either good or bad, right? Like it's a two-way, it's a two-sided conversation. It's very polarized, right? You got your good side of the Force, your dark side of the Force versus your light side of the Force. You have your Empire versus the Rebels. So it's very polarizing, very binary. And it makes sense. Again, it gives us a rallying point behind it. Well, it gives us a rallying point to get behind, is what I was trying to say. You have your figureheads on each side of those arguments. You have obviously your dark side Empire people, your Darth Vaders, your Snokes, your Palpatines, Kylo Rens, things like that. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have your Leias, your Lukes, your Obi-Wans, right? Your Yodas, the people that were helping to kind of maintain peace and balance it out, balance the tyrannical rule of the Empire and of the dark side of the Force. Again, very, very binary, but it gives us what it does is it gives us concrete and very kind of hard, definitive people or figures to rally behind. Unfortunately, like there is really more to the story than that, and that's what I think Andor really does so well. Well, actually, all the shows this year that have been released, you have your what's it called? Nah, I'm going to draw a brain fart now. Boba Fett, and then Obi-Wan, and then now Andor. We kind of get a peek at, and I feel like Andor is really going to give us a look behind the curtain, a peek at the non-figureheads, right? The non-rallying points, because with any kind of polarized conversation, there's always the majority of the people are caught in the middle. Right? Like, yes, there was a rebellion. Yes, there is good side and dark side, light side and dark side fighting each other in this massive galactic battle. But I think there's so many more beings in the galaxy that are just kind of caught in between this raging war. And so where does that conversation fit? For us as human beings on this earth, it really, I think, kind of reflects a lot of where the world is at. I mean, it can, I don't know, like anytime I take a peek, which is rare, but anytime I take a peek at like news or current events and things like that, it definitely feels that the world is very, very polarized and very, very binary. I think the conversations that we're being exposed to online, through news, through television, and through public kind of media, whatever that media happens to be, it is very, very. I mean, it plays to that binary thinking. I mean, especially if you just look at technology, like computer language is binary, and I've definitely observed that the more access to information we have, the more, as a species, the more binary our thinking has become, like. Is that a result of the actual binary in the technology? Maybe. I mean, it gives us access to information, and no matter what your perspective is, no matter what side of the fence you're on, your perspective and your belief systems can and will be supported and reinforced, and so it pushes us further and further into polarization. When we take ourselves online, you realize again there's so much more nuance to life, and you can't reduce any one individual to just their belief system, because there's so much more to it, right? And so with Andor, what I really feel like is that's what we're going to get, right? We're going to get a perspective on the individuals that are caught in between, right? Right, like again, if we approach life as binary, we make ourselves blind to that nuance, right, and the uniqueness of those individuals. And so, like, I love that yes, Star Wars can have a conversation about one side versus the other, but it also, if you really dig into it, and any Star Wars really, whether it's the originals, the prequel trilogies, the sequel trilogies, the new shows, and the new assets that are being released, you can have whatever level of conversation you have with Star Wars. Again, that's why it's such a great framework and a great thing to build on when it comes to personal development. You can really glean a lot of perspective from it. So like, be careful of that. Be careful of that binary thinking. Be careful of buying into, well, even with Star Wars, as far as an enjoyment level, be careful of just buying into, that one side is wrong versus another side, right? You can, well, because it just programs you to miss out on the nuance of life, and it can program you to missing out on the nuance of potentially discovering the beauty of each unique individual, right? The individuals that you meet. I have friends, right? Like, I have friends that lie on the polar opposite end of the spectrum, in terms of belief system, but that doesn't make them any less beautiful to me as friends. Sure, we'll have disagreements, and I've had many very kind of heated debates with very close friends, but they've not become not close friends, as a result, because it's not binary, because again, it is nuanced to their experience and the uniqueness of their perspective. I have my unique perspective, and as a result of my experience, and I know that people didn't necessarily go through exactly the same life that I go through, so how can I expect them to always agree with my belief system and my perspective? I can't, right? And so I have to be able to kind of really accept the beauty. Well, and that's the beauty, right? Like that's part of the beauty of life, is that we are all kind of uniquely different, and we have, potentially can discover so much more to life and of life if we allow ourselves to be open to that uniqueness. And so, like, again, be careful of that binary thinking. Also, again, if we do reduce people to that, like if we reduce people to being wrong because they're not in alignment with our own specific belief system, then we end up treating them less than human, right? We end up treating them less than individuals. And we see that, I think, happening already here in Andor. Eventually what will happen is the person that gets treated inhumanely will eventually, like, somebody you can't get away with that, indefinitely, right? You can't get away with pushing people around with your beliefs indefinitely. Eventually, somebody will snap. Somebody will snap. And we saw that already here in Andor very early on in the episode, actually. He had those two security guards or security officers kind of picking on him. Like they were being mean and they were being jerks. They were bullying him. And obviously, they thought they could get away with it because the Empire has, the upper hand, or if they're aligned with the Empire. And so they have, like, the gravitas and the bravery to be able to reduce people and treat them less than, and an individual can only take so much of that, and unfortunately, well, obviously Cassian's reaction was extreme and what happened was extreme, but like when people get caught in the middle of things, okay, so one side versus the other, right? That binary thinking, that polarized mode of thinking ignores the individuals caught in the middle. Right, caught in the middle, like Cassian, and I think ultimately we will see other people, from the other end of the spectrum caught in the middle as well. But those things, the individuals will be driven, that are caught in the middle, will be driven to do some pretty extreme things as a result of being caught in those circumstances, as a result of the friction and the discord and the unrest that's happening, from the polarizing forces. Right. Again, these are just people, just like an individual is just trying to live out their life, and they're caught in the middle of this galactic battle between, relatively only a handful of people in the galaxy when you really think about it, and again, driven to extremes as a result of being caught in the middle. Yeah. Be careful of that. Be careful of being sucked into binary thinking. Be careful of being convinced of your own rightness. The other aspect of that is that you could potentially be manipulated, right? You could be manipulated because of your binary thinking, right? There are people that will position themselves to gain from your following, from your loyalty to a specific ideal or a specific belief system, and they'll take advantage of this, right? They'll play into that, and they'll garner your favor even more by playing into those belief systems, and then the fears and the rightness of that belief system, and the wrongness of opposing belief systems, right? They'll play into that, number one, to garner your favor at best, but at worst to control you for their own ends. And we definitely have seen that happen. I mean, that's all politics is, right? Politicians will kind of speak to your binary thinking and will play to those belief systems, and they'll use you for their own gains. Right? Like, what politician have you ever known in your life to actually have solved your problems, right? Especially on the big scales, right? On the grand scales, on the national scales, maybe local politics and governance. Like, I think local politicians have a tendency to be more interested in public service, but when you get to the bigger scales, there seems to be less and less real actual concern for the individual, and more playing to our fears and playing to our belief systems, for their own personal gain. So you got to be really careful of that, and one way, again, to combat that is to not buy into your own rightness, not buy into the rightness of your own belief system, because again, it it makes us ignore the individual that's sitting across the table from us, whom could potentially give us so much to discover of life, just by hearing their perspective, right? By hearing their perspective. I guess it's also kind of the difference between having an opinion and being opinionated, right? Right? We're all entitled to having an opinion. We're all entitled to having our own belief systems, but being opinionated is believing in the rightness of that opinion, and then the wrongness of anybody who doesn't agree with it, right? All right. So yeah, be really, really careful of that. Be really careful of that. I guess, yeah, that's really the main message. We know where Cassian's story ends. We know how it ends, and I think this show is going to be amazing to see how we get from point A to point B, especially with the flashback scenes that they're giving us of Cassian's youth, which that I think requires a whole conversation on its own. It's this village, and it's almost kind of it's very rustic. It might even be almost primitive village. That it's primarily youth, like children, no older. The oldest among them, I would say, would be in their mid to late teens, right? So that story, I can't wait to learn more about, as Cassian's roots. So yeah, we're gonna get so much more information about Cassian and how he gets to the point where he gets to in Rogue One, where he's very, very conflicted. I think one of the reasons why he's gotten so conflicted and he's doing such extreme things, as going as far as murder, is because he has fully bought into, by that point, the one side of the spectrum, right? One side of the polarized conversation, thinking as things in very binary. And again, it has caused him to see the world in a reduced manner without the nuance, and so it's easier to maybe make those kinds of decisions, such as committing murder, right, for the sake of the belief system. So, very, very important conversation, especially in today's context, that we do as much as possible. Well, I think number one, stay off the feeds, right? Like, really give yourself some social media detox, because I mean, honestly, I don't know how much I believe that a lot of that is even real. In terms of, like, are there really people out there that have these perspectives? And if there can't be that many. Again, so many more people lie in the middle and are caught in between these two opposing sides. But all we hear is the far ends of the spectrum. And so we can easily believe, especially through social media and the internet, that that's how all of life is and how everybody is. And it's really not true. It's really not true. Again, there's so much more nuance. Get yourself off the internet. Get yourself off social media. Don't read the comment threads. Don't engage in political rhetoric, because it's just, I mean, it's useless at best, right? It's useless at best. And really, yeah, just really, I don't know, cure yourself, or really be, again, well, we talked about awareness, right? Really be aware of what aspects of life that you have potentially very, very one-sided belief system on, very binary belief system, and remind yourself that binary thinking isn't reality. Right? Remind yourself that the person that you might be making a judgment on or seeing only as a one-sided thing, a one-dimensional thing that isn't in alignment with your belief system. Understand that that's a human being, right? That's an individual just like you, who's trying to get through life just as much as you're trying to get through life, and trying to have a happy existence, right? Right? Don't forget. Don't reduce people to the labels that the people, the would-be people in power want you to believe those people to be, right? Like, don't buy into any of that, because you lose out. Not only does it potentially create massive amounts of conflict with you and whoever else, but you really do kind of shut yourself off, and you lose out on discovering so much of the world if you only see it in binary terms, if you only see it in black and white terms. There's no such thing. Everything is different shades of gray. Everything is so much more nuanced, and as a result, so much more beautiful than that, right? So yeah, that's the message for today. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in. What do you think? What do you think? I know like I tend to ramble and repeat myself, but I think it's an important topic. Also, I'm starting to cook in the truck. It's getting really warm in here, so I got to get going. But let me know what you think, guys. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment. Hit me up on the Twitter or Facebook. It's POTJ Podcast for both of those things. And of course, if you want to send us an email, send us an email. The email address is info@pathofthejedi.com. You can leave the title of this episode in the subject heading and let me know what your thoughts are. I definitely am very, very open to it, and this is as much a discussion as it is me sharing my perspective, right? I want to hear your perspective as well, especially again if it could shed light and expand my view of how things are in the world and to see the beauty and uniqueness of you. Speaking of beauty and uniqueness, it is that favorite time of the show, time for the shout out. This week's shout out goes to two individuals, actually two dear friends of mine. Oh my goodness, I've known these individuals for more than a decade now, each. And yeah, well, okay, so I just wanted to give them a shout out. It's I didn't even say their names yet. This shout out goes to my good friends Leonard Pan and Justin Mercado down in Florida. Both of them are actually going through what's it called, a hurricane right now. Florida is getting hammered, so all thoughts and prayers going out to Florida. Please be safe, batten down the hatches and get to escape routes if you guys need to escape to somewhere safer. But I wanted to give Justin and Lenny a shout out because number one, like I said, they are dear friends of mine. I've known both of these individuals for together and individually for over 10 years. They're just incredible. They're the kind of friends that are your ride or dies, right? Like no matter what. And I bring them up. Well, it's actually really apropos to today's episode because we obviously over the years have had opposing and differing opinions about things, differing belief systems and perspectives, and that's never hindered the beautiful friendship that we have. They've just always been like these guys that have my back no matter what. I mean, obviously there are a few differences. I think we're part of the beauty of our friendships are we just get along no matter what, and 99% of the time it is daisies and sunshine, whatever the saying is, roses and buttercups. I don't know, but you know what I mean. It's always a beautiful time with the friendship, but and any instance, which is rare, any instances that there's an opposing beliefs or opinions about anything, it's never an issue because we have so much love and respect for each other, and I really appreciate the two of them for that. I really appreciate them allowing me the space to have my own beliefs that may not be congruent with their beliefs, right? And that's okay. Again, that's part of the beauty of being individuals. It's part of the beauty of discovering each other, right? Like the uniqueness of each other. And these guys, again, no matter what has happened, they've always been there for me. They're really truly ride or die, and I love them. I got a chance to see them when I was in Florida last, and it's just a beautiful thing. I can't say enough how much I appreciate their friendship, how much I appreciate both of them as individuals, how much I love that they're a part of my journey and that they continue to share their lives with me. So with that, guys, if Lenny and Justin, if you're out there listening, which I know you are, this week's shout out goes to you. Okay, so that's going to do it for this week's episode, guys. If you're not already following or subscribed to the show, go ahead, please follow and subscribe to the show. And if you like this stuff, if you appreciate the content that we bring to you guys every week, by all means, I would really appreciate it if you guys were willing to share, right? Be willing to share this message if you think that there's, number one, I think primarily if it's helping you and if you find at least entertainment value in it, chances are somebody else will. And so, if you're compelled, please share the show with people. We would really appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't already rated and given a review, if that's available on the particular platform that you're listening on, please give a rating and a review. It really helps us get discovered even more. And of course, stay tuned for the upcoming new segment, Jedi Academy. I'm really excited about that. It'll be a little bit more structured. Like the regular episodes have become a little bit more raw and off the cuff. My intention with the Jedi Academy, it'll be a little bit more more structure, so that really gives you guys some meat to dive into and to use in your daily lives. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be coming very, very soon. But otherwise, a new episode next week. We're going to be diving into Andor episode 2. So until then, guys, be well, be safe, and as always, may the Force be with you.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company nor Lucasfilm Limited and is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names and sounds and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is intellectual property of Path of the Jedi unless otherwise indicated.